Well, we've got 2 big weeks of AEW television coming up. Next week is a big one because it's Arthur Ashe Stadium. And when they first ran this building a few years ago, it was for the first ever Kenny Omega, Bryan Danielson. They had like 21,000 fans there. It was unbelievable. They did like maybe it was a half hour, maybe it was an hour draw. It was unbelievable. Great match, great show. They're going back next week and they're going to be doing both Dynamite and Collision. And I know that they've got a lot of really big stuff planned. I think we've got Darby Allin and John Moxley on that show. I think we've got Silva's got some graphics he'll run through. So, we got the Young Bucks and Will Ospreay and Kyle Fletcher. But the one that I'm probably most interested in as a longtime Ring of Honor fan is Nigel McGuinness and Bryan Danielson. Mm. And I know you think a lot of Bryan Danielson. I know you think a lot of Nigel McGuinness. They have an incredible history in Ring of Honor. It looked like once upon a time we were never going to see these guys again. It felt like Nigel McGuinness he's excelled so well at commentary. You just thought, okay,
he's really, by the way, he's really, really good at commentary.
Yes.
I hope, I don't mean to jump in on you, Conrad. I apologize. I'm just excited.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm hoping that this is a one-off for Nigel and he gets to put a period at the end of the sentence from his in-ring performance, because he's so freaking good at color. I would hate to lose him as a color commentator so that we can have him in ring, not taking anything away from his in-ring abilities or what he could bring to the table. But I think his future in such a big way is in commentary, because he's, for my taste and what I enjoy out of color commentating, I think he's one of the best. I really do. Of the current crop, Nigel would be, if I was starting a wrestling company tomorrow, Nigel would be one of the first calls I would make when it came to looking for color commentary, because he's really good.
He's fantastic. And we're going to see him in Arthur Ashe Stadium, hook it up with the AEW World Champion, Bryan Danielson. I'm pumped about it. And it feels like if you're going to announce a TV deal, Arthur Ashe Stadium could be a good spot. Or the following week on October 2nd. That's going to be the 5-year anniversary show. And there's a little
that would be good. See, that's like your bloodline comment. I don't want to put anything out there. I don't want to drop any hints to anybody, but this makes sense. The 5-year anniversary makes the most sense, really. That would be a smart move.
And the match that they've already started to promote, Eric, is a dream match that hardcore AEW and internet wrestling fans have been clamoring to see. Ricochet versus Will Ospreay. And it's been a kind of controversial announcement since they've just done it, I guess, 24 hours ago at this point. Because people thought, hey, this should be saved for a pay-per-view. They're doing this too soon. I even saw Dave Meltzer say, this needs to be a draw. They can't beat Ricochet yet, but they don't need to put the belt on him yet. A lot of people are scratching their heads about what to expect, because when these guys hooked it up in Japan several years ago, it melted the internet. And it created a lot of controversy. The idea that we're going to get it on free television on the 5-year anniversary of AEW Dynamite, I think between Arthur Ashe and that 5-year, that might be the time I would announce my new TV deal.
Absolutely. And as far as, this match on free TV, I get that. Right now, Tony is serving his client. His client isn't, the fan that's going to buy a ticket to go to live non-televised events. They don't do touring. You only have so many pay-per-views. The television component of Tony's business, and WWE's business for that matter, is the most important box that you need to check. So the idea of putting this match on free TV, I think, is a smart move. Look, Tony doesn't have financial pressure. Tony doesn't have a boss. Tony's got a client to serve, meaning WBD. But he didn't have a boss. Nobody's sitting down with Tony going, hey, Tony, we're getting a little, this red ink is getting, a little messy. When's it going to go away? Because he doesn't have any financial pressure in that respect. So for Tony to, without any financial pressure, to make the decision to put this match on free TV makes all of the sense of the world. Wrestling fans who think that they understand the wrestling business, well, They'll talk about it because they're just looking for shit to talk about on the internet. But I think it makes perfect sense.
I do want to ask you about Arthur Ashe because I think it's such a cool building and I'm glad they're running it. But I know they're going to be running it this year. I shouldn't say I know. I feel confident that they're going to be running this year at a loss because as we're recording, the most recent report we've gotten from WrestleTix is that there's been 4,411 tickets distributed and that it's only set up for 5,728. Now, I know I mentioned a few years ago when they first went, there were 21,000. I don't think that's necessarily fair to compare back then to now. It is a different company, but year over year, I do believe that's fair. And last year in Arthur Ashe, they had 11,263. I know they'll have more than 4,411, which is our most recent report from WrestleTix, but no matter what, it is trending down. I don't know how to reconcile that in my head. Like I'm all for the new television renewal and I hope they're wildly profitable and rah rah. How do we get some of that consumer confidence back, Eric? I feel like when WCW lost that consumer confidence, they never got them back. So, Eric, consumer confidence, man, how can AEW get back just to where they were? I mean, just last year, it felt like there was more interest in the live event perspective.
Yeah, when you go from 11,000 down to 4,500, I don't know what the percentage is. You're pretty close to 60%, 55% loss. That's not a little bit. That's why I use the term hemorrhaging. That would be considered hemorrhaging audience year over year. How do they get them back? Dude, I've been saying this for 4.5 years. It's all about the story. And I know I can sit here as I say this. I know my timeline is going to get flooded with, and they're going to explain whatever angle's going on or point to whatever is happening on television and define that as story. I ain't buying it. It's story, I guess. Kind of like boy meets girl, boy gets girl, boy loses girl, boy gets girl back. That's a story. It's not compelling. It's not interesting. It doesn't have any of the elements that make a good story or a compelling story. It's just a story, kind of. But if you give boy meets girl, boy gets girl, boy loses girl, boy gets girl back, give it to Shakespeare and watch what happens. Now it becomes literary history. And that's what AEW needs, not necessarily literary history, but they need quality storytelling that they have yet to produce. When and if they do, that will be in my opinion, this is all my opinion, having been there, done that, knocked it out of the park successfully and fallen flat on my ass and everything in the middle. I've done it all. And by the way, when I wasn't knocking it out of the park, King of the Hill, the biggest wrestling company in the industry, I took it from the sewage, a company that had been beleaguered for years with poor performance, not being able to attract the audience, not being able to legitimately compete with my competitor, WWE at that time. Competitor only in the sense that we were in the same category until we went head to head. Going head to head is the only time we were truly competitive, but we were in the same business. But we were so far behind because of the mismanagement that took place in WCW for such a long time prior to me getting there. I got the opportunity. I was able to turn it around. I knocked it out of the freaking park, but I also, as we're going to hear about on this episode, ate fucking dirt. I've done it all. And when I wasn't doing it all, I was a part of a company somewhere in the last 32 years watching somebody else go through that same process. So my perception, my opinion, is not based in emotion or ego or anything other than my experience. And until Tony recognizes that, accepts it, and is willing to do what he needs to do to effect it as part of his brand and make the commitment to it, there's nothing he's going to do that's going to stop the hemorrhaging. It's like a patient laying on the table, bleeding out from a femoral artery injury, and somebody says, "Hey, let's just buy more aspirin." You've got to know what your problem is before you can fix it. And Tony, at least from my perspective, from the outside looking in, and from someone who's been around for a minute, has yet to accept the fact that Tony's personal view of the product and what Tony likes is completely inconsistent with what the audience wants. Yes, you're going to have a fraction of the audience that really digs the hardcore nature of AEW or whatever it is they see in it. And certainly some of the talent, because there's amazing talent there. Talent's not the issue. But as we've seen, and as we're discussing, and as WrestleNomics and Brandon Thurston and any other credible source that you want to look for that's publishing real numbers and real information, all you have to do is look at that and go, we got a problem here. And that's why I'm so bewildered. Okay, great, you got to do a 3-year deal, but just do the math. What's 30% of 700,000, which is what AEW's, that's their new high at this point. Well, you're going to lose another 200,000 in 2025. Now you're going to be down to 500. Then you're going to lose another 100. This thing will be less than a decent YouTube show before long, unless Tony recognizes the issue. I mean, I'm sure if Tony was the head coach of the Jacksonville Jaguars and he was calling the plays and he kept calling long passes, drop back, throw some bombs, and they couldn't ever win a game that way. Eventually, at some point, some assistant coach would say, "Hey, Tony, maybe we should get a running back or two. Maybe we need to change the formula in order to be competitive." And that's kind of where AEW is at. Until Tony recognizes it and commits to making that change, we're going to continue to see hemorrhage of ratings and hemorrhaging of ticket sales. As we've watched, it's not my opinion, we've watched it happen over the last 12 to 18 months.